Hello, everyone. I'm Sean Bjorndal,
And I'm Jesse McCullough.
and welcome to the first episode of Dispensing Leadership, a podcast from RPH Ally and Drug Topics. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about philosophy. So, Professor Jess, let's start us off with this topic. What do you got for us?
Well, this is an interesting topic, and it's a question that baffled me when it was first asked of me. Somebody said to me, "Jess, what's your philosophy?" And I didn't know. I mean, if I asked you, "What's your philosophy?" What's your answer?
I don't know.
Exactly. Exactly.
I don't know.
It's an odd question, but you know what? It's an important question that we need to answer. When the question was asked of me, my mentor would go on and he would say, "Well, Jess, your philosophy is very much how you set your sail." And I would tell you that after he gave me that explanation, I was probably more confused than ever. I did not grow up on the water. I'm actually not really comfortable around the water. So whenever he uses this sailboat analogy, it confused me all the more. But I would tell you that one day I finally got it. And it happened I believe it was 2015, 26, must have been 2015, 2016, something like that. 2016. I should have been prepared for this, right? But I had the opportunity to speak at a pharmacy conference in Toronto. And the wonderful thing about being asked to go speak somewhere is that, you get to go to these different places, you get to do these different things, but occasionally it corresponds with an important date. And for us, it was actually over my wife and I's wedding anniversary. And so I said, "Well, hey, would you like to go to this conference with me?" And typically she says no, but whenever it was, "Hey, let's go to Toronto for this," she was all on board. And while I was doing my presentation, she was booking dinner. She was figuring out where we're going to have our anniversary dinner, and we had our dinner in the CN Tower. Now, if you've never been to Toronto, the CN Tower is kind of like the Space Needle in Seattle. This super high building, and at the top there, it's a restaurant that rotates, and it makes a complete 360-degree rotation in about an hour. And we go up there, we get seated, and we look out, and we're able to see Lake Ontario. And as I look at Lake Ontario, it clicked for me because what I looked at and what I saw is I saw not one, but I saw two sailboats on Lake Ontario. And the thing that was sort of puzzling is that they were going in opposite directions. And and now my mentor's words are starting to connect, and he said, it's how you set your sail. And when you think about it, the conditions on Lake Ontario are pretty much the same for everybody. Temperature's the same, the wind's blowing in the same direction, yet one's going to the right and one's going to the left. How does that happen? It happens because of how you, and I guess the nautical term is how you trim your sail. And if anybody is super curious about this, YouTube, I'm sure, has a bunch of videos on it. But how you position your sail and you do these things, it really impacts which direction you end up going. And at that point, things really started to click for me, and now I was starting to get it, and I was like, "Ooh, what is my philosophy?" Because the fact of the matter is this: we're all in these situations, right? We are all in whatever environment. Whenever you watch this, whether you're watching it when this is released or you're watching this sometime in the future, there's environmental conditions that are going on that impacts us in the pharmacy world. There's stuff from a regulatory perspective. There's stuff from a supply chain. There's stuff from support staff. There's all those different things are going to impact us. But the fact of the matter is they often impact our competitors in the marketplace the same way, right? It's not like these things are only impacting us. It's something that's going to impact everybody around us the same way that those boats on Lake Ontario were experiencing the same thing. And it's interesting that your philosophy will determine which direction that you go, right? Your philosophy will determine whether you go to the right or to the left. And so it becomes a very important question for us to answer is, what is your philosophy? Is your philosophy optimistic? Is your philosophy pessimistic? Right? There's I would tell you that a number of the pharmacists that I worked with, especially early in my career, they felt that the best days of pharmacies was 10 or 15 years before, right? And I would tell you that today my philosophy is very much, I think the best years of pharmacy are still ahead of us. So I'll pause there to see if that makes any sense to you, Sean.
It does. It doesn't help me with knowing my own philosophy, but it's one of those things that you'll have to think about and actually, listen to what you're saying. It's like I
Mhm.
don't know, but ask the questions, think about it. Are you optimistic or pessimistic? Right? Like I feel optimistic about the future too. I don't feel the
Mhm.
same optimism if with the same attitudes that we have right now in pharmacy. I feel like there's got to
Mhm.
be attitude adjustments. There's got to be like leadership skills learned. There's got to be a
Mhm.
lot of things that we need to improve as a profession to be more optimistic about it and to go in the direction we needed to. But I'm still struggling with the philosophy piece of it, and I guess yeah, I just don't want to insert foot in mouth it too early here because it's like
Well,
I feel like I'm a go getter, and I feel like that's maybe a philosophy to have that
that
optimism to keep pushing forward. But
that is that is it. There's a resilience that comes with that. And to anybody who's listening to this, find a philosophy and start with it. You can always upgrade it as time goes on. It's not like you have to be perfect when you start. You just but you have to start to be perfect. I think there's a quote that goes along those lines. But you have to find a place, and you have to make a decision that, okay, am I going to be optimistic? Am I going to be look for opportunity, or am I going to reject opportunity? Right? And this is such an important thing because there's so many philosophies that get ingrained in us, as we've at least that's what my observation is. And my guess is that you have similar experiences, Sean. That, for example, I was exposed to the philosophy early on that if a insurance carrier didn't pay for a prescription, then the patient wouldn't take it. Does that sound like a philosophy that you've, perhaps, maybe you don't subscribe to it, but have you at least been exposed to it?
100% for
Yeah.
sure. Or
You,
or
you know,
even though like or even a step further, oh, we're not going to offer it because we know no one's going to pay for it.
right, right. And I don't know that that's necessarily the case. Right now, it may be there may be a lot of examples where that doesn't happen, but there may also be some examples where it does happen. That was a philosophy that pharmacist I worked with. His name was Scott. He said, "I'm not going to make decisions for my patients. I'm going to give them the information. I'm going to inform them so that they can make the best choice for themselves." Now, in those days, omeprazole required a prior authorization all the time. Like, those were the expensive drugs of that particular day. But he said, I'm not going to say what's expensive on behalf of this patient. I'm going to say, hey, this is what your insurance carrier requires. This is the cash price. How do you want to advance through this? Right. And he would lay it out and give that patient the opportunity. And I thought, wow, isn't that something? Isn't that something? And he had a different philosophy. I've seen that in the immunization space when we were scaling the immunization program. It was interesting, especially in those early years, because there were groups of pharmacists who would say, "Oh, it's way too early to give flu shots," and then like a few seconds later, it would be, "Oh, it's way too late." Right? Nobody wanted to vaccinate early in the season. No, we wanted to wait. But then all of a sudden, we got to sometime in October, and quote unquote everybody had already been vaccinated. That they missed the opportunity. Right? There's different philosophies that exist out there, and one of the things that we have to identify ours. But I would also say that we've probably passively acquired a number of philosophies which may or may not serve us well. And I think that it's worth the time to just take a moment and look for those. What are some of those philosophies that exist? I live in you're in Southern California, where I'm guessing it's really nice today. It is early March in Pennsylvania, and so we have a lot of like there's a lot of like brown colors.
Yeah.
It's cold and it's wet and it's muddy and it's sort of yucky here right now, and so it becomes easy. People would subscribe to the philosophy that, oh, it would be easy to find people to work in Southern California. That's a nice place. Nobody wants to move to Northwest Pennsylvania. Nobody would want to come. That's a philosophy that people have, and that's not true. There's some people that like that. There's people that like to come to this area and do different things that because um, they like the smaller communities, or they love the rural nature of things. They've been in the city, they want to be out. Those are different philosophies. But what I find is that we have them, we've internalized them, and oftentimes we will apply them to other people, sometimes erroneously.
Fascinating. Let's get back to something you said earlier. It kind of sparked something in a philosophy: competition,
Yeah,
right? Or collaboration.
right.
Man, I've been at this now for 5 years, trying, down this RPH Ally path and entrepreneurship, and with PGX Ally as well. And it's like I've come to find out that we are not as collaborative or cooperative as I thought we would be. Like, to
Hmm.
me, I think we need to take more of a philosophy of big machine versus independent,
Hmm.
right? Because there is, like, if there's so many pharmacists out there that are trying to do cool things and start their own companies, and I think there's still a lot of there's still a lot of competition, but it's like there's only 300,000 pharmacists out here compared to 300 million people.
Right.
Like, there's enough to go around.
There,
It's a big
there's a pretty
ocean.
big
Yeah,
there's a
it,
pretty big pie, right?
there is, and
There's a
it's
pretty
almost,
big pie out there.
yeah. And I'm just
Absolutely.
trying to think about, like, okay, one philosophy. Like, I'm trying to think about my own philosophy as we're talking about this, and I want to come at it as a collaborative, cooperative. I
Mhm.
recently heard the coopetition phrased like,
Ooh.
hey, you know what? We may be competitors because we're all going after similar patients, but guess what? Like, we can be collaborative in this venture together, right? You're still gonna
Mhm.
have to battle the big machines that control 70 to 80% of the markets out there, right? But there's
Mhm.
got to be some way where we can be more collaborative as a profession. I don't know. I just had that thought as you were
Oh,
talking.
that's an excellent thought, and that I think that points to a philosophy that a lot of people have probably observed and maybe wondered about. Like, have you ever gone down and you're at a particular intersection and there's three different pharmacies on three different street corners? Or maybe four, right? It's like, why are all these pharmacies together? Why would you want to put yourself where your competitor is directly across the road? Right? Now you do that. You look at that with car dealerships. Car dealerships all seem to be like right on top of one another. You look at fast food restaurants or restaurants in general. You seem to find them in clusters, right? But I've had a lot of people who are just like surprised, like, oh my goodness, what do we need another pharmacy on at this, on this particular block? Why do we need that? And what one of the I think this is an erroneous philosophy that a lot of folks have, and it's that in the world of pharmacy, our competitor is the other pharmacy down the street. And I don't subscribe to that. I subscribe to a different philosophy, and it's that our competition is poor health. Right. It is people who are not getting the maximum benefit from their drug therapy. Right. So that's really who we should be competing against. But I've talked with many district managers who have they seem to think that they're going to put some other pharmacy down the road, that they're going to take market share from them. I think the reality is that there's a ton of market share that you can grow, and by doing those things. And what was the word that you used? Coopetition? Was that the word?
Coopetition, yeah.
Coopetition. I'm gonna have to write that. I don't even know how to spell that. I'm gonna need some tutoring after we're done here. But yeah, I think there's a lot of things like that that we need to be aware of. That we whenever we have good competition and it pushes us to be better, who benefits from that?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my interesting story on philosophy, and it was how are you setting your sail? And it took me and almost by accident, ending up at that restaurant and looking out the window and seeing those sailboats going in different directions to realize that, you know what, the environment is most likely the same or largely the same for many of us, uh, but how you choose to have a philosophy about that particular environment can absolutely determine whether or not you go left or whether or not you go right. And I think from a leadership perspective, that is such an important thing to have, is to have a philosophy that is pointing forward, that is looking for opportunity, that is looking for growth, that is not that's not satisfied with the status quo. That
Yeah.
says, "Hey, I think there's new opportunities out here. I think there's more people that we can serve, and we have to be prepared for it." To have some type of growth mindset in ourselves and in our staff, and in the community that you can serve.
So in the last couple of minutes here, Jess, how do you think we could start thinking about our philosophy, or what would be our call to action for our listeners here or colleagues out in the pharmacy world? Like, what do you think we should do with this information that you gave us today, as far as defining your philosophy? You said upgrading your philosophy. I like that. What you said there. Like, tell us a little bit more. What's your call to action here?
My call to action would be very much just to begin by taking an inventory. What are some of those what are some of those common phrases, or what are some of those common beliefs that you have? Those are absolutely your pharmacy, or that's easy. Those are absolutely your philosophy. It's easy for me to say, right? Um, take an inventory of that, and you need to also, as you make that list of what are those philosophies, you need to ask yourself, how do these philosophies serve me? Are these beneficial, or are they detrimental to the work that you're trying to do? And I would, the next step I would say is, do not be afraid to upgrade your philosophy, because that's what I had to do. I had to look and I had to say, wait a second. When Scott showed me a new philosophy, I had to say, I think this is a better philosophy than the one that I've been carrying around. Right. The philosophy is, I'm going to make, decisions for patients, as opposed to educate patients and inform them and give them the opportunity to be an active participant in their care. That's probably a better philosophy than what I was originally, sort of programmed with. So, that's how I would encourage people to start. Take an inventory, do an evaluation. Do they serve you? And then don't be afraid to upgrade, and don't be afraid to change them. And maybe you can say, hey, this is a philosophy that I have. What are some other ways? What are some better ways that I could potentially look at this?
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Jess. This is great information. There's a lot more coming your way from the professor here. I like to call him the professor, my master Yoda in leadership. And catch us next time. We'll be dropping these probably every week with Drug Topics, our partner. Thank you so much.